morning. Thank you, Andy. And thank you for sacrificing your birthday to be with us today. We can give him a round of applause. Yesterday was his birthday, but he decided to be with us, to be our facilitator. We appreciate you for that. Allow me to bring my salutations to you all, and to, in a special way, to recognize our key guests and our key stakeholders. Thank you for honoring our invitation. We know it's a busy time of the year, as different partners, as different organizations, and as different stakeholders. We do have quite a lot of work that we are working on, but you decided to join us, and we really appreciate you for that. So all protocols observed on an account of time. So my task here is to give you an update. Last year we met at the Troutbeck Hotel, 23 to 25 October 2024, during our 14th edition of the NGO Director Summer Retreat. And we discussed quite a number of issues, quite a lot of very important developments within our civic space. And we came up with quite a number of what I considered to be good recommendations and suggestions in terms of the way forward. And we were guided by our theme for the year, which was reimagining the future of NGOs in Zimbabwe, and ensuring that CSOs contribute effectively in terms of development and governance process of the country. But before I go straight to some of the key issues and just an update in terms of where we are, and I also want to submit to you or to assure you that the way we have framed this year's agenda is really a building up of what we have already covered last year during our 14th edition of the NGO Director Summer Retreat. But just to add my voice in terms of the reflections, and also thank you so much, our key speakers, for the affirmation in terms of your continued support, especially in the creation of enabling environment where civil society organizations are able to thrive despite some of the shifts, some of the involvements, and some of the challenges that we might be confronting as we do our work. I would like to share some of the, what I consider to be just reflections, but also, drawing it from what we discussed last year. So I think from the previous presentation so far, it's clear that as we are gathering today, civil society is standing at a critical juncture. I think when we met in Yanga, while the theme was around reimagining ourselves or the future of civil society, but we did not foresee some of the experiences or some of the new developments that we are now experiencing as a sector since the beginning of this year. This year, like what has been shared already, we experienced quite a number of profound changes that left most of us off balance and that have significantly affected our operating environment. Who would have thought that the USAID, which was very visible through their teams and branding during the 2024 NANGO retreat, would no longer be in existence just 2 months after the retreat? The shifts we are experiencing this year, it's a stark reminder that change is the only constant variable, and that we shall forever be contenting with the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. As we deep dive into discussions that we have for the following 2 days under the theme Navigating New Frontiers, Development Financing and Civic Space in Transition, I am challenging us to think differently and to be prepared to shift on some positions that we have held with regards to civic space and also financing of our work as well. The operating environment is not what it was 10 years ago, and the models and strategies we may have relied on may no longer be fit for purpose. Yeah. In our collective effort, we featured the PVO as a possible threat starting from 2021 November, but now it's a reality. We, however, need to shift our mindset from viewing it as a threat and start thinking on how we can safeguard our existence through compliance. This does not in any way mean that we should not continue pushing for civic space, which allows us to operate without any hindrances, but it also means that engagement with authorities becomes key. Perhaps what we needed is knowing each other well and recognizing that we are not enemies, but we share the same aspirations. A country where everyone lives with dignity. This can only be achieved if we engage more and we do so sincerely. Civic space is not only shrinking, but it's also shifting. This challenges us to drop the silo mentality and embrace a way of thinking where all players in our ecosystem have a role to play. And for that, I would want to appreciate all partners and all organizations. As you can see from our different materials, from our stage and many other visibility materials that we have prepared, you can see there are quite a number of partners, from development partners, donors, civil society organizations, and it demonstrates that we are working together and there is collaboration. And I think this is what this moment requires us to do. And going forward, we would want to see more of this kind of collaboration. Thank you so much for the support.
Yeah.
As I conclude my reflection, I'm also challenging us to wear our strategy caps and be prepared to think differently, because the landscape is different now and it requires new ways of doing things and new ways of working together.
Yes.
Okay, so that was just my reflection in terms of what we have. And so in terms of our update, I have tried to come up with 4 key themes in terms of what emerged from the previous edition of this retreat. And I think I would also want to highlight that as we convene this retreat, we also try by all means to make sure that we pay attention to other thematic sector issues. And those thematic sector issues will be covered adequately and sufficiently during the side sessions that we have prepared for this conference. So I will not dwell much on thematic sector issues that have emerged during the 14th edition of the summer retreat. So I'll start off with the enabling environment, where there was a reaffirmation that central to the work that we do as civil society, we need an enabling regulatory and operational environment such that we are able to ensure that there is CSO effectiveness and sustainability. The key issues and concerns that came out were anchored around the PVO Amendment Bill, which at the time it was posing significant strength, and also there were gray areas, especially in terms of guaranteeing the autonomy and independence of civil society in pursuit of enabling environment. And since then, we have continued to engage through various ways, deploying multi-pronged approaches, and also utilizing the Talk to a Regulator platform that we launched during the retreat. But just to say, as we gather today, the bill is now in act. I think from the chairperson's report or from the chairperson's remarks, it was covered adequately. But also we take note that it's not yet fully operationalized because there's still some work in progress. We can mention the issue of the standard operating procedures. They are yet to be finalized. There are certain structures to be established. For instance, establishing the Office of the Registrar of PVOs, it's work in progress. The reconstitution of the PVO board is work in progress. But we are glad that during this conference we have an opportunity to get a latest update from our regulator, and thank you so much for honoring our invitation. We really appreciate. We continued to utilize quite a number of spaces of influence. Of course, there's been quite a number of coordination platforms for civil society to discuss, to strategize, to come up with positions, but also we have continued with the with engagements on various, utilizing various processes. And just to mention some of these processes, we utilized the 4th round of monitoring under the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, GPEDC, where as a country we are also being assessed for the GPEDC, and there is a pillar under enabling environment. So the results are out. I think we have an opportunity again to share, but we have had quite a number of interactions where those results were disseminated. We have continued to participate, of course. On most instances, it was through invitations to the structured dialogue on arrears clearance and debt resolution, and I don't want to labor much to talk about how the experiences has been, as we have another speaker who is going to also share a bit around that in terms of our involvement in the process. The recent Africa peer review mechanism, again, we also had an opportunity to participate, and there has been interest around what has been the experiences since the promulgation of the PVO Amendment Act. And I think we have also shared our perspective with them in that regard. The issues of the MOUs was one of the key highlights again, where we were raising issues to do with local authorities demanding fees, non-standardization, lack of police, support, or any legal framework that supports the acquisition and issues of MOUs. And the resolution was then made to say we need to revisit the 2003 policy on NGOs in humanitarian assistance, and the guidance that we have got from the regulator, the Minister of Public Service, through the PVO desk, was that we have to first complete the processes around the PVO Amendment Act, and then later on we look at possibilities of relook at that, and probably we can get a final resolve to it. But just to also mention that it's still a key issue, I think, especially in the Matabeleland region, Matabeleland South to be specific, they are experiencing a lot of challenges. You remember last year we were discussing the 22 requirements that the PDC and also the local authorities were asking. So recently we convened a meeting with organizations operating in that region, and they shared with us that this problem is still persistent in their region. There was also a recommendation to adopt a global accepted practice of self-regulation, where we come up with a code of ethics and conduct for the sector, and we start to move for a peer self-governance model in terms of our regulation. So we have been trying to also then push for the issues of self-regulation to be included in the standard operating procedures or the regulations for the PVO Amendment Act. And I think we have since submitted our inputs with regards to that. And we are still hopeful that maybe is one thing that might feature in the regulations once they are finalized. But also just to appreciate the support, technical assistance that is coming from the Financial Intelligence Unity, as they are also pushing for self-regulation as a good practice when it comes to NPO vulnerabilities, and also in terms of the FATF processes and recommendation aids in particular. I'm sure during that session we'll also get some nuggets around that in terms of how we can move forward. But through this, maybe we can also see how best we can advance this self-regulation discussion to some advanced stages. I think we have been talking about it for a long time now, and it's time for us to move into action. Then the second issue was around how do we improve CSO and state relations, collaboration, and trust building. So from our end, we made a commitment that we were going to operationalize the Talk to Your Regulator initiative, and I'm happy to update you that throughout this year, we have had a series of engagements with various regulators. So far, the engagements have been covering mainly the PVO desk in the Ministry of Public Service as our regulator, ZIMRA, NASA, National Employment Councils, city councils, especially in major towns and cities, and also the Financial Intelligence Unit. And I'm sure as they are also participating, it is because of some of those gains that we have since achieved through the Talk to Your Regulator initiative. But just to say, as we are looking at emerging issues and developments, we are very desirous going forward to also start engagement with POTRAS to do with issues of data protection. And we are glad that this time around we also have a session where we'll get to appreciate what are the developments, where are we, what are the expectations, and what are the implications to us. And I think it's one of the target regulator that we will be engaging after this retreat. Then the other on relationship, again, I think the other issue was around the limited participation of CSOs on FATF processes. Here we are talking about mutual evaluation exercises, national NPO risk assessments, national risk assessments, and also outreach, sector outreach programs. And we are glad that we have a very good working relationship now with the Financial Intelligence Unit in terms of ensuring that we bridge the gap, the knowledge gap. And I think quite a number of us here, especially NGO, local NGO leaders, we have been involved in one or the other around processes of FATF, especially in terms of appreciating the recommendation 8. But again, as we are convening this retreat today, we will also have an opportunity to, to get an update in terms of what are some of the upcoming processes, especially the mutual evaluation exercise, and what is the role that is expected of us, what are the entry points for us to engage effectively in the process, and also make sure that we submit our inputs and recommendations with regards to that. And our interest is to make sure that the FATF recommendation 8, Zimbabwe is now fully compliant. We are aware that as it stands, it's partially compliant, and we are really interested in that process such that at least we correct that. Now that at least we know the different processes and the different requirements. On the issues of resource mobilization and fundraising for CSOs, especially community-led and community-based organizations, that was one of the key issues as well. On this one, I think one of the key outcomes was for us to move away from, capacity development programs where it's event-based, where it's more like classroom sort of setup approach to accompaniment. So we have introduced the concept of having what we call master classes, where we have a very few number of organizations that are part of the cohort. Then they are being trained. And so far we have covered areas of leadership development, fundraising, and resource mobilization, capacity building initiatives, especially targeting the community-based organizations. But for it to be objective in terms of the scope and coverage, we have then utilized the quality assurance and accountability certification mechanism, QuAAM, which we also launched together with the Talk to Your Regulator last year. Then last but not least, localization agenda, which was one of the key issues that emerged from the previous retreat. One of the major recommendations was for us to create a tripartite forum. I think the observation was we are talking about localization in different spaces, but donors are talking about it on their own. If they are to include locals, they only work with their partners. And then international NGOs as well, they were also doing their own parallel processes. As local NGOs, we were also talking about it in our own spaces. So the recommendation was for us to create a tripartite forum where donors are represented, international NGOs are represented, and the locals are represented. And so what we have achieved so far, we are glad to confirm our partnership with the Zimbabwe Alliance for Humanitarian Action, which is a platform of 9 international NGOs, and they are going to also make a presentation during this retreat, and we'll get to know more about them. But the idea is at least now we have international NGOs and also donors on board, and there is that platform. And we have since convened the inaugural localization symposium that was hosted by this alliance. And we do have a report which we can share widely with you in terms of some of the issues. So at least we view this as a step ahead in terms of starting to have conversations. But I think what is missing is around having some structures where we actually move the localization agenda, and we are doing so from the same level of understanding and appreciation, especially around the definition and some of the things that we need to look at when we are advancing the localization agenda. So in a nutshell, I think that is it in terms of just a review of what we have covered last year. But like I said, the detailed updates and presentations are going to be covered during this year's retreat sessions around state of operating environment, issues of FATF processes, localization, data protection, and many other issues. Thank you so much, and I do submit.